I was researching for this conference, I was looking around. I knew a lot of the people I wanted to have, but I was also looking farther afield, and I found a man named Bill McCusker, who had started a foundation related exactly to this topic, fathers and families, the importance of fathers, and who had really done deep dives into the importance of this. I was thrilled to discover him, and it took me a very long time to finally track him down. It was weirdly difficult, and when I did, I was so delighted. We're thrilled to have him. Please welcome Bill McCusker.
Good morning, everyone. It's a thrill to be here. I'm going to jump into this right away. There's a very important piece of research I want to talk to you about. A number of years ago, researchers at the University of Pennsylvania wanted to understand better what the typical reaction was with this kind of audience at this kind of conference when there were guest speakers involved. The researchers learned that typically within 30 seconds of the speaker beginning his or her remarks, 90% of the audience began to daydream. 75% of those daydreams were sexual in nature. So it gives me a great deal of confidence knowing that before you this morning that my remarks already have begun to bring pleasure to the majority of you. What a great conference it is. The War on Men is the first part of this three-part conference. The topic couldn't be better. The timeliness of these topics is superb. But Karen, there's something I have to get off my chest. It may be a little bit awkward. I did a little bit of research on AFA after you were kind enough to invite me, and someone posted that this is a hate group. Is this a hate group? I mean, do you vet your speakers? Do you know what your speakers are going to say when they come up here? I mean, I guess it was an LGBTQ plus conference that you had, or maybe some remarks that were made. What did these people say? Did they say something like, it's not a good idea to groom a kindergarten kid? I mean, how outrageous can you be? Did someone actually say that parents should have a say in what pornography is included in the K through 8 libraries at public schools, for crying out loud? Did you let someone post something as ridiculously foul as this? I mean, God, what kind of group is this? I hope that certainly wasn't the case. In the interest of true confessions, in the interest of transparency, I think it's important that you know who the speakers are in front of you today. Now, I came from New Jersey. You didn't know me a whole lot. There's a couple things about myself that I think you ought to know. Some of this may be surprising. Number one, I'm white. I am. And I have been for a long time. It may go back to birth. I don't know. Number two, I'm straight. Yeah, I'm a male. Although I'm sensitive to gender issues, I use pronouns. Mine are F-U. And if that's not bad enough, I'm a member of a traditional Latin Mass Catholic parish. There, I said it. So if anyone has Christopher Ray on speed dial, now would be a good time to call the old boy. Chris, we got one up here, baby. Domestic terrorism, come on out, send your guys, bring the SWAT team. 20 AR-15s, that ought to do it. All right, I'll behave. This is a rough audience. I'm going to go back to 1965, a little bit of ancient history, and Dr. Farrell covered this so well. I'll cover a couple segments of this briefly because I think it sets the stage pretty well for what we want to say after this. But 1965, it was Daniel Patrick Moynihan who Dr. Farrell described. He was an intellectual. He was mostly Democrat. He was, I think, among other things, a U.S. senator from the state of New York, well respected. He put a paper together In the paper, he said there's a ticking time bomb, and it's going to explode, and it's going to mean disaster. And he was talking about one segment of society. He was talking about black families. He said this thing is going to go off, it's going to spell disaster, whether we're talking about education or equality, the ability of black people to enjoy the rightful share of the American dream. What was this disaster he was talking about? It was the rate of fatherlessness in the black community. It had risen to this alarmingly high percentage. You know what it was back in 1965? It was 25%. This alarmingly high percentage that he said was a ticking time bomb, 25%. Do you know what it is now? I saw 72.8%. This morning I saw 80 in the inner cities. I forget what Dr. Farrell said. Now, lest you think I'm making a racial charge here, do you know what it was among whites back in 1965? It was 8%. I think said among boys it was 5. I had 8%. And part of what Moynihan may have been doing is looking at the delta between 8% and 25, which is significant, between black and white. Well, do you know what it is among whites now? I have 34%. And as a country, we're in the low 40s. So think about this. Blacks increased almost threefold from 1965. Whites increased more than fourfold. And as a country, we're in that danger zone, that ticking time bomb zone, because we're way over the 25% that he blew the whistle on. Now, it raises a question. So what? So what? So there's a bunch of kids coming home from the hospital, and then they come home to a home, and there's no man in the house. Big deal. What's the so what? Well, if you look at I don't know if you can read that well, if you look at the data, and Dr. Farrell went through some of this, this is a well-researched area. The data is presented very well. To me, it's unassailable. But if you look at any outcome, if you look at any measure of performance with kids with dads versus kids without dads, it's an extraordinary story that is told. So you look at the first thing, just poverty. People say they don't like poverty. Okay. Well, a kid without a dad is 4 times more likely to live in poverty than a kid with a dad. Is that surprising? Not to me. Not to me. You got a single mom busting her ass trying to raise a bunch of kids, no dad in the house. It's not surprising that so many of them live in poverty. Look at some of the others. Behavioral problems. The suicide stories were tragic today. Infant mortality, likely to go to prison, likely to commit crime, join gangs, being a girl, getting pregnant. On and on and on and on. It's a very sad story. To me, it is compelling. There is a guy who summed this up very well. Children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of schools, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. That was our friend Barack Obama. That was before he became president. I got a backstory on that for lunch if anyone wants to hear that. If I look at this, you can look at statistics all you want. I know what Mark Twain said about statistics, right? Was it he who said there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics? But to me, these things are compelling. In fact, we talk about equality. I can't think of 2 more unequal groups. Kids with dads versus kids without dads. There's probably another way to come at this so what question. What we saw there were things that are impacting our society. To me, this is the biggest social issue we face as a country. And to me, this is one of the two drivers of what I call systemic inequality, the other being the war on school choice. But maybe there's another way to look at this. And if you look at roles, you look at the roles that are missing in the lives of these kids, almost 19 million kids that don't have a dad. Well, they don't have a dad, but what does that mean in terms of what the roles are that fathers play? Well, what are those roles? You could identify off the top of your head a number of these things. I look back at a book that I could put together called Fatherhood in Pieces. I talked to 35 individual men. They were fathers. They were old guys looking back. They were younger guys closer to the starting line. They were white, they were black, they were blue collar, they were CEOs. The first question I asked them was, one-on-one interviews, I said, tell me about your dad. And some of the answers were amazing. There was one guy who said, my dad, he's the person in this world whom I love the most. He said, my wife is second. Another guy said, my dad gave me something priceless, a perfect example of what I never want to become. And everyone was kind of in between those two poles. But you go back to these roles and you look at this, provider, protector, disciplinarian, teacher. There's two questions. What happens when these kids don't have that role in their lives? And number two, when they become fathers, how do they learn how to perform in these roles? How do they know what a father is? For a young woman who didn't have a father, how does she know what the traits are in the person that she's going to marry, or the man who's going to become the father of her children? How does she know what expectations to be looking for in terms of these roles? Let me drill down on my own life a little bit, if I may, and talk about these roles and what they have meant to me. I had my first daughter 34 years ago. It took about a year to write a letter to my parents. I called it Parent to Parent. And in it, it's just a page and a half, in it I said, becoming a parent has given me a far more acute understanding of everything that you did for me and for my three siblings. And I said, I want to thank you for these things. These are priceless gifts. I said, there are 4 priceless gifts that you gave us. 1, an understanding of right versus wrong. 2, a sense of God, of religion, a sense of something bigger than us at work in our lives. 3, sacrifice. You put us first. We knew where we stood in your priorities. 4, unconditional love. We could have been axe murderers. I've been tempted to be one, but we could have gone off the deep end. They still would have loved us. They would have kicked us in the ass, which they were not hesitant to do when we deserved it. But 4 priceless gifts. I thanked them, and I said, I hope I have the ability to impart these to my kids at some point. Let me get down a little bit further. They were both my parents. Not perfect people by any stretch. But let me drill down a little bit more on my dad, if I may. A couple other stories. When I was about 12 years old, my next door neighbor was my best friend. His name was Bob Peck, or 10 or 12, I guess. And one of the things we loved to do was build forts. Do kids build forts anymore these days? Yeah. Do they? We built tree forts and ground forts and underground forts. We're constantly building forts. What do you need to build a fort? Wood. Right. So where did we get the wood? We went around to the new houses in the area. You know, there's scrap piles and stuff. Talked to the workers. Hey, do you have any extra? Yeah, take a few pieces there and get out of here, kid. Well, one Sunday, we went to a new house, and the workers weren't around. We got some nice pieces of wood. We staged this wood in my backyard. We're salivating over this tree house we're going to build. Mr. Peck, next door, Bob's father, who happens to be my dad's boss, he comes over. Hey, where did you guys get the wood? Oh, the new house. What are you going to do? Going to build a tree fort. He said, that's great, have fun. My father comes out 10 minutes later. He says, where did you get the wood? I said, the new house. He said, take it back. I said, Dad, wait, you don't understand. This is scrap wood. They don't need it. You know, that's not scrap. Take it back. I'm looking at Bob Peck. He's looking at me like I have a third nostril. We took it back. Deep down, I was furious. I was embarrassed. Deep down, I knew my dad was right. Was he being a hard ass? He was being a disciplinarian. It's what dads do. It was around the same time My parents took the kids over to the boardwalk in Ocean City, New Jersey. There's rides, amusements. They're walking down the boardwalk. There's a group of teenagers, probably 16, 17, 18, 19, 4 or 5 of them. They said something to my sister. She's 13 or so, kind of a difficult age. I didn't hear what they said. I think it was pretty crude. My father heard it. Next thing I know, he has these 4 or 5 guys, and he is in their face. And I see steam coming out of his ears, the likes of which I've never seen. And his neck is, I thought he was going to have a stroke. And I'm looking at these kids, and I'm saying, guys, if you know what's good for you, you won't say one word, because he's about to bite your noses off. Fortunately, they just muttered something like, oh, sorry, and they walked off. Was he being belligerent? He was being a protector. It's what dads do. Around the same time, I'm looking in the garage one day. I don't see my dad's golf clubs. His golf clubs are missing. Now, my dad was a really good golfer. Not because he grew up on a country club, he never did. He caddied when he was a kid, learned the game from the ground up. He said he would make $1 carrying 2 sets of doubles morning and afternoon. He'd give his mother 80 cents, he'd keep 20 cents. The golf clubs are missing. I say to my mom, where are Dad's golf clubs? Oh, he sold them. He sold them. Why? She said, I needed money to buy you kids shoes for school. My father never said a word. Was he being a martyr? He was being a provider. It's what dads do. The last story, I'm 17 years old. I'm sitting in the kitchen. I got my driver's license. I feel good about myself. My dad comes down. He says, oh, you got your license? Yeah. He said, I'm going to say this one time. If you ever get pulled over by a cop, you roll down your window, you keep your hands on the steering wheel. You say, yes, sir, no, sir. You do whatever he says, and otherwise you keep your big fat mouth shut. That's verbatim. I can hear it. I can hear it rattling around in there. That's exactly what he said. I said, okay. What was he being there? An alarmist? A teacher? A protector? It's what dads do. Parenthetically, I had the same conversation with my daughters when they turned 17. My language may have been a little less colorful than his, but the message was exactly the same. So, where does that leave us? It leaves me feeling sorry for these kids that don't have a father in their corner like I did. I hit the lottery at birth. I was born into, you talk about privilege. I had 2 parents who loved me and sacrificed. That's privilege. And I'm extraordinarily grateful for that. And I'm disheartened when I think of so many kids that will never have the chance to experience that start in life that I had. So let's ask another so what question. So what do we do? Mine is a business background. I was in business for 35 years, and I was told, don't raise problems until you have a solution or something that you're going to offer. I don't have a magic bullet here, but when I think of this question, what should we do? I think the answer may be dependent on who we is, or what is the definition of we? Who does that sound like? I think there may be 4 answers, depending on who the we is. So the one group, what do we do about this? The one group may say, what? What are you talking about? What question? What issue? You know, these are the brain dead people who go along in life. They're not engaged. You know, they're doing their own thing. Okay, that's one group. There's another group that I'm afraid of. I don't know how large this group is, but I'm afraid it's far larger than I could have ever imagined. And this is a group that is looking at this and saying, problems? We don't see a problem. Sure, we're killing fathers. We're killing off fatherhood. We're attacking marriage. We're attacking traditional families, of course. That's what we do. We're trying to destroy the foundation of our country. We're trying to kill America. We're trying to ruin every underpinning of a civil society. Everything is going just fine. What me worry? This is what they believe, the defathering of our country. This isn't my slide, but I thought this was very appropriate. Mass defathering of our children, breaking up of the family, so we are easier to control. I think that's part of what that second group is talking about. Now, there's another answer, depending on who the we is. And I think this we would be a group of people who would probably say, yeah, poverty, yeah, that's not good. And kids getting arrested, nah, yeah, that's kind of ucky, and mass incarceration, all the rest. But we can fix those things. We don't need to restore the family. We don't need fathers to step up and do this stuff. We just have to be less greedy and give money through the state, give money to the people who need it. So we're talking poverty. Poverty means people don't have enough money. We'll give them more money. We'll raise the minimum wage and reparations and guaranteed minimum income. That'll get people out of poverty. A girl gets pregnant, well, it costs a lot of money to raise a kid. Give her more money, for crying out loud. You don't like kids dropping out of school, failing in school? Then stop grading them, for crying out loud. Don't give them grades. That'll fix that. Don't like kids going to jail? Don't put them in jail. Too many kids in jail now? Let them out. Can you see it? I mean, can you see the people who would be looking at this as a problem? A problem which, by the way, I think we all ought to agree on. This fatherless problem, I don't care whether white, black, Democrat, Republican, man, woman, or anything else. I think this is an issue that we all ought to agree on is a presenting issue for our society, regardless of what the divides are that separate us. But unfortunately, we don't. There's a fourth answer. And I don't know. Not a magic bullet, like I said. But in the interest of coming up with some ideas or seeding the conversation with some specifics, here are a couple things that I'd like to throw out. The first thing, I think we need an image campaign. Now, I was a marketing guy for a long time. I guess I gravitate to something like this. I think we need a big, robust, expensive, omnipresent, multiple media image campaign that tries to move fathers from the left-hand side. Can you read that? Fathers are dumb, unnecessary, obsolete, sinister, harmful. We don't need them. Throw them on some 21st century trash heap and let's be done. I think we need to move them in the other direction. Fathers are important, they're noble, and now more than ever, we desperately need them. And Karen, you said something interesting down below. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. What a bunch of bullshit. You know, that's what my grandmother from Northern Ireland, that's what she used to say all the time. I think we need another mantra, and it's something like that. A child needs a dad like a bicycle needs wheels. Now, how do we do that? How do we do that? I don't know. Here's something I tried. This was a billboard campaign. It was very modest. I didn't have a whole lot of money for this. But this is something we put up in Philadelphia and parts of South Jersey. We don't have it there now. But I thought, you know, as simple as this was, I think this is a step in the right direction. I'd love to see something like this all over the damn country where we're delivering that message to children and adults alike. And it may not be that, it may be something else. So let's think about what that could be. I think there's another campaign. Video is such a powerful medium. I think we need video to move from the left side to the right side. Fathers are silent, wimpy, feminized, hidden, laundry, sniffing. You ever see it? Well, what do fathers do in commercials? They're baking cookies or they're sniffing laundry, right? That's if they're straight, okay? I think we need to move them to the other side. They're outspoken, courageous, masculine, out front, and ass-kicking. That's another thing I would do. Bring back the good old-fashioned ass-kicking. I'll handle a few of these problems. But truly, I think there's hearts and minds that we have to deliberately aggressively pursue. Now, the good news is there are a ton of videos out there. There are fathers talking about fatherhood. There's other people talking about the importance of fatherhood. I produced over 40 fatherhood videos as part of Fathers and Families, where I had everyday guys, not the guys with the book, but a bunch of everyday guys, where I just got them on camera and I said, give me something that's important about you being a dad that you think is worthy giving to the next generation of prospective dads. What advice would you have for them? And there's 40 little snippets. They're not that good. It's not Steven Spielberg quality or any of that kind of stuff. But it was an attempt. I also had 3 professional athletes, 2 football players, including the guy who was in, I forget the name of it, Indomitable? No, the bartender in Philadelphia who's on the Philadelphia Eagles, Mark Wahlberg, Invincible. Mark Wahlberg played him. Yeah, he did a bunch of videos for me. But we have these videos. I think perhaps we can corral these better and direct them to the appropriate audiences. That's something that I was not able to do myself with the videos that I had. But there's a ton of raw material. I think we ought to put our heads together and figure out what do we do with all that. I think there are videos that kids ought to put together. Boys and girls talking about their dads as heroes. Here's what my dad did for me. Here's what my dad does every day. When I watch my dad, this is what he is doing on my behalf, helping my mother and my siblings. I think there's a whole series of those that could be very poignant. Maybe they wind up on TikTok. Maybe, the libs of TikTok, well, maybe there's something else talking about the dads of TikTok. The last thing I have here, why don't we have dads go into schools? Do you know who the only men are that go into schools? They're frickin' drag queens. Okay, can we get real men to go into schools and talk about kids? I got a doctor, a lawyer, a business guy, an electrician, a plumber, a veteran, a military person. Men, not women, men to go in there and talk about something about fatherhood. Here's why it's important to me. Here's what I think you kids, girls and boys, what you ought to be thinking about this thing called a father and what a father does. Don't you think Randy Weingarten would love this? It'd be worth trying just to piss her off. Or the Library Association or whatever that Marxist group is. Anyway, I think there's food for thought there. Let me go on to the next one. Here's the third thing I want to throw out there. And this is something I developed. The dad link, I called it for a little fatherly advice. So pulling from my business experience, I developed a company around this. I had forms, I had roles, I had non-disclosures, I had insurance, I had legal issues and all that kind of stuff. But the idea was to take a father, like some of you guys, a father, and hook them up with a young man or a young woman that didn't have a dad. Big brothers, big sisters, kind of like that, but the model was different. Where we could get these volunteer guys and try to entice these young people to give this a try for a little fatherly advice. Can you read the small print there? I know it's kind of hard. This is really what it's trying to do. An experienced father, called a dad link dad, will be paired with a young man or young woman, called a dad link son or a dad link daughter, in a lasting one-on-one relationship. Right? All dad link participants will be adults who are either 18 years of age or older. So it's not a kiddie thing, it's adult to adult. So a dad linked son or a dad linked daughter could be 18, they could be 38, but they don't have a dad, and they figure they could use a little fatherly advice. All communication will take place via telephone or video chat, not in person, not residential. This is my legalese, I'm not a lawyer, but my legalese kicking in and trying to mitigate any chance of litigation. Dad link dads will do what dads do. Listen to their dad link sons or daughters, understand where they are in their lives, help them think through options, offer some perspectives they gain from raising their own kids, and provide a little fatherly advice. Now, when I launched this, and this was on Father's Day a couple years ago, it was right during COVID. So that, you talk about timing with the Super Bowl, well, my timing was infinitely worse than that. Because I'm trying to do this over the phone, I'm trying to do it via email, and I can't do face-to-face selling of this thing. But I made two assumptions. Year one, I wanted 5 guys, 5 fathers to step up to this thing and say, yeah, I'll give this a try. I got some time, I wouldn't mind giving back and helping a kid, I proved that to be correct. That assumption was correct. I had 5 guys ready to go in the first year. The second year, I wanted 10. The third year, I wanted 20, double it a second time. And then after that, we'll see how we take it nationally. I would play matchmaker. That would be my role as running this thing. I could not find the other half of the equation. Couldn't do it. I talked to pastors, talked to grandmothers. I had a business case, particularly aimed at the children of single mothers in the workforce who are beset with all sorts of issues and their kids are running wild, but they're single moms. I had an option for the military and got pretty close until they said, no, we think there's liability involved. I was talking to the foster system. I was talking to a guy who runs substance abuse. I was talking to nonprofits, foundations, and all this kind of stuff, and I could not find one, what I call a dad-linked son or a dad-linked daughter. And I wound up dissolving the company. A very sad day. I think, though, the concept is a viable one. Maybe you guys, think of something like this. I'm trying to talk to some other... I got to stop. I'm talking to some other groups who think that perhaps this thing could mesh with the mission that they have. And if so, I'd like to talk to them. I'd like to give it to them. I would help them modify it or make it work, tailor it. I would not make a cent on this, never did, but I think it's something that may still work. We're not going to get 19 million kids and 19 million fathers, but we could start in something that I think would make a difference in some lives, and I'll end with this. Just a quote from that book. Now more than ever, we need good fathers. We need their courage and strength, their good humor and hard work, their protection, judgment, perseverance, discipline, and love. Fathers who, along with loving mothers, offer the best chance for that newborn and our families, communities, and our country to grow and thrive. So that's it. Thanks so much.